You know that place that, at first glance, looks like a tropical paradise? Lush vegetation, breathtaking views of the turquoise sea, dramatic cliffs surrounding the island. Sounds like the perfect getaway, doesn't it? Well, here comes the plot twist. This isolated piece of land is home to a veritable army of poisonous snakes. And there aren't many of them. Its name is Shedao. Also known as China's Snake Island, the place has one of the highest densities of venomous snakes in the world. And the most impressive thing? There are people who have dedicated their entire lives to protecting these creatures, becoming almost legendary guardians of this wild territory. Today on Bello Mundo, we're going to explore the curiosities, legends, and challenges of one of the most enigmatic and dangerous places on the planet. So, take a deep breath and set sail with me for Ilha das Cobras. Number 1. Location and geographical data. Shedao Island is located in the Bohai Sea, about 10 kilometers from the Liaodong Peninsula in the south of Liaoning Province in China. And the place is beautiful. If you look at it from above, you just want to drop anchor and enjoy it, don't you? But it's not that simple. Shedao, which is less than a square kilometer, about 73 hectares, is a land of contrasts. On one side, you have high cliffs, impressive rock formations that plunge straight into the sea. On the other, you have deep valleys covered in dense vegetation, a veritable green labyrinth. To complete the picture, the surrounding waters are not exactly inviting for diving. Lots of reefs, hidden rocks, and strong currents. In other words, any approach without a plan and without caution can become a problem. This already protects the island from curious tourists. But that's not the only reason that puts visitors off. Because, in the end, Shedao's main highlight isn't the clear waters or the landscape. The absolute protagonist here has scales, venom, and inhabits every corner of this little paradise, the Shedao viper. And we've already talked about it. But first, let's understand how this paradise of snakes came to be. Number 2. The origin of the island. Believe it or not, Shedao wasn't always an isolated island. Thousands of years ago, it was part of the mainland, but geological changes and variations in sea level ended up separating this piece of land from the rest of China. And that's when nature found a way to transform the place into what it is today. When Shedao was still connected to the mainland, snakes already inhabited the region. But as the sea rose and the island was formed, some of these snakes ended up being trapped there, with no way of getting back. Since they couldn't simply swim back to dry land, they had to adapt to their new habitat. And that's what turned them into ruthless predators. And on the menu, the main course is migratory birds. Every year, a number of birds pass through, either to rest or to feed before moving on. And guess what the snakes eat? Basically, those birds. But before we talk about the bird feast, let's meet the star of the show. Number 3. The Shedao viper. If there's one creature that rules Shedao, it's the Shedao viper. This name may not be as famous as that of the black mamba or the cobra, but believe me, this snake is among the most efficient predators in the world. It is a relative of Asian vipers, and, although it is not very large, measuring between 65 and 70 centimeters in its adult stage, what it lacks in size it makes up for in lethality. Its coloration varies between brown and gray, with dark markings along its back that seem to form an X. This perfect camouflage makes it practically invisible among the leaves and rocks of the island. And the most interesting thing, on the side of its head, it has a striking post-ocular band and a pair of loreal fossae, small thermal sensors that detect heat variations. In other words, even in the dark, It knows exactly where its prey is. Now on to what really makes this viper one of the most feared snakes: venom. Number 4. Venom and hunting strategies. Why are these snakes so lethal? The answer lies in their diet. As Shedao Island is isolated and has no rodents or other mammals to hunt, the only food source available is the migratory birds that pass through every year. This small island is on the path of several species that come from distant regions and make a strategic stop to rest before continuing their journey. And that's when the Shedao vipers come into play. The problem is that the birds are not easy prey. They are fast, fly high, and can escape at the slightest slip-up. If the bite isn't lethal or the poison doesn't act quickly enough, the bird can simply take flight and disappear. Nature, of course, has taken care of this. Shedao vipers have developed an extremely potent and fast-acting venom designed to bring down prey before it has a chance to flee. In a matter of seconds, the bird's nervous system begins to fail, causing paralysis and preventing any attempt at flight. But strong venom alone is not enough. These snakes are also true ambush masters. Many of them hang from low branches, where birds land to rest or look for insects. Others prefer to hide among rocks, waiting patiently for an unsuspecting bird to pass close enough. When the opportunity arises, they launch a lightning-fast swoop with no time to react. And since life on the island has its periods of scarcity, the Shedao vipers know how to save energy. When the migratory flocks leave, they enter a state of reduced activity, surviving for months without feeding. Basically, nature has programmed these snakes to gorge themselves on food when the birds appear, and then live off what they have stored up. Number 5. Migratory birds. Speaking of birds, the island is an important stopping point for species that fly long distances from Siberia to warmer regions, or vice versa. Thrushes, swallows, warblers, and many other species come here during their migration. They take advantage of the location to rest, look for food, or just take a break from their journey. Of course, they often end up walking into an ambush of hungry vipers. The bird doesn't always have time to react. The attack is swift, and the powerful venom ends the game quickly. But the migration continues year after year. In this case, nature has created a mechanism. If on the one hand the snake depends on the birds, on the other the birds still take advantage of some of the island's resources, and the chain of life continues. Number 6. The risk of extinction and human threats. Although Snake Island seems like a very hostile place for us humans, the real threat to the viper's survival comes largely from human action. During the 20th century, the snake population fell dramatically for a bizarre reason: hunting for the production of the famous snake wine. This drink, very popular in traditional Chinese medicine, was made by soaking live snakes in rice alcohol. Popular belief had it that the liquid had medicinal properties, capable of curing joint pain, strengthening the body, and even improving virility. There is no scientific proof that this works, but for decades the demand grew and turned Shedao into an illegal hunting ground. Hunters entered the island armed with sticks and bags, captured the snakes and sold them on clandestine markets. The result? The viper population collapsed. At the beginning of the 1980s, researchers estimated that there were less than 10,000 snakes left on the island, an extremely low number, considering that decades earlier snakes were counted in the tens of thousands. In addition to rampant hunting, bird hunting also harmed the snakes. If the birds dwindled, the vipers ran out of food and starved. And, as if that wasn't enough, another problem arose. Brown rats arrived on the island hidden in fishermen's boats. These rodents began to compete for food, and during the cold months attacked the weaker snakes. This led to a real imbalance in the ecosystem. It wasn't until 1982 that the Chinese government decided to take action, declaring Shedao a national nature reserve. As a result, hunting and fishing were banned, and patrols began to monitor the island. But no law works on its own. There had to be people inside making sure that the balance was restored. That's when the island's guardians came into being. Number 7. The Guardians of Snake Island. If there's one group of people who deserve respect, it's the Guardians of Shedao. These guys have not only agreed to live in one of the most dangerous places on the planet, but have dedicated their entire lives to protecting the snakes. The job is far from glamorous. The dwellings are rustic, the climate is extreme, and, of course, there are snakes absolutely everywhere. During the night, it's not uncommon for a viper to appear inside the accommodation, hide in shoes, or slither across the floor while someone is sleeping. Every step has to be calculated. Every move has to be thought out. An emblematic episode involving these guardians was the great drought that hit the island in 1980. For about 3 months, there was almost no rain. The natural water sources disappeared, and the snakes began to wander around, disoriented in search of something to drink. The situation reached a critical point with the risk of mass mortality. The Guardians did not stand idly by. They organized voyages with patrol ships, carrying hundreds of basins full of fresh water. When they disembarked, they encountered snakes emerging from every corner, desperate for hydration. With effort, wells were dug and small reservoirs created to alleviate the situation. Without this, the vipers would have suffered a gigantic, perhaps irrecoverable population crash. And the challenges don't stop there. As any biologist who works with snakes knows, it's impossible to spend years in this place without getting bitten once or twice. Some keepers report several stings over the course of their careers. The venom sometimes doesn't take effect immediately, but a few hours later the limb is swollen and throbbing with pain. If there is no antiophytic serum, the condition can worsen. Fortunately, the reserve maintains some medical supplies and a communication system for help, although everything is precarious. Even with all the precautions, accidents do happen. Some guardians, after so many bites, have developed a kind of partial resistance, but this doesn't negate the risk. Each bite is a dangerous lottery. In addition, they have to deal with an unexpected problem: snake infections. Many Shedao vipers suffer from stomatitis, an inflammation of the mouth caused by the beaks of the birds they hunt. The problem? If the infection progresses, the snake can't open its mouth to eat and starves to death. The solution? The keepers have to hold the snake, force its jaw open, and apply an antiseptic directly to the wound. Without thick gloves, because that would prevent precision. Imagine the level of cold-bloodedness required to hold an ultra-venomous viper, open its mouth, and treat a wound while it tries to free itself. And what an incredible thing! Even after retirement, many of these guardians return to the island to teach newcomers and continue monitoring the snakes. It's a life mission, a commitment that goes beyond work. Without them, Shedao could have become an island without snakes, or worse, a piece of land dominated by rats, without the natural balance that has kept this ecosystem standing for so long. Number 8. Stories and legends that surround the island. Like any remote place surrounded by mystery, Shedao Island also has its legends, and some of them are quite exaggerated. One of the best-known stories tells of giant snakes that once tried to cross the sea to become dragons. It is said that the Dragon King, guardian of the waters, did not allow them to complete the crossing. Many snakes were attacked by sea creatures, while those that survived returned defeated to the island, giving up their dream of gaining wings. Another legend, in the style of classic pirate stories, claims that there are treasures hidden in inaccessible caves guarded by deadly vipers. Of course, there has never been any real evidence of this, but the mere fact that the island is infested with snakes already feeds the popular imagination. In the end, Shedao's only real wealth is not chests full of gold, but the biological heritage of the snakes, which were almost wiped out by rampant hunting, and today receive special protection. Number 9. Inside scientific research. If there's one thing that science has learned over the years, it's that snake venom can be both a lethal weapon and a powerful medicine, and it's no different with the Shedao viper. The venom of Shedao vipers has aroused great scientific interest. The toxins present in these snakes are a veritable chemical cocktail, and many of them may have surprising medicinal applications. Chinese researchers, in partnership with international universities and research centers, have been studying these substances in order to better understand their pharmacological properties. Some studies indicate that compounds from the venom could be used to develop new painkillers, anticoagulants, and even anti-inflammatories. There is also research that seeks to explore the potential of toxins to treat neurological problems and chronic pain, as well as the development of more effective anti-ophidian serums. But research isn't just limited to venom. With the advance of technology, scientists have been using drones and infrared cameras to monitor snakes from afar, avoiding disturbing the environment as much as possible. This makes it possible to track hunting habits, snake movements, reproduction rates, and even identify diseases that could affect the population. Monitoring the island with technology is a way of ensuring that everything is in balance and that natural or even climatic changes don't put the snakes at risk. This kind of study is not just a matter of scientific curiosity. Understanding the snake's behavior helps to map out conservation strategies and answer fundamental questions, such as the impact of climate change on bird migration, the ideal amount of snakes the island can support without ecological collapse, and what can be done if a disease starts to spread among the animals. Science, in this case, not only studies the vipers, but also works to ensure that they continue to exist in the future. Number 10. Hyper-restricted access. Who can get in? Fancy a visit to China's Snake Island? Well, I'm sorry to say, but you won't be able to set foot on it unless you have super special permission from the government. And it's not easy to get. The nature reserve restricts tourist arrivals to protect both the snakes and the visitors. Any human presence alters the environment. And let's face it, there's not much in the way of security or hospital facilities nearby. So who goes there often? Basically, only 3 groups of people have access to the island. The first is the scientists, who study not only the snakes, but also the migratory birds and all the local fauna. The second group is made up of rangers and researchers who work in the administration of the reserve, ensuring the conservation of the habitat and monitoring the snake populations. The third, rarer group is made up of TV crews and documentary makers who have obtained special permission to produce educational content. Even so, anyone who lands there must follow strict safety rules. For the general public, the only way to see the island up close is via boat trips that circle around it, but do not allow disembarkation. And let's face it, that's a good thing. So, what else made your hair stand on end about Ilha das Cobras? Did you know there was such a place where nature decided to add an extra touch of adrenaline? If you enjoyed this trip to one of China's most dangerous and fascinating destinations, don't forget to like and follow the channel and turn on notifications. There's a lot of creepy history and places in our Bello Mundo coming up, and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for joining us on this adventure, and we'll see you in the next video. See you then.